Welcome to Afternoon Reflection this Monday, the 6th of July. A number of years ago, I was holidaying in Queensland, and while I was there, I visited SeaWorld, and one of the rides I went on was the corkscrew. And like most roller coaster rides, it began gradually, gently climbing higher and higher. And there was a short period when we reached the top, when we seemed to stop, and suddenly we plunged over the edge again, twisting and weaving around the tracks, corkscrewing around the tracks. And then there were other times when we seemed to come almost to a stop while we were hanging upside down. And then gravity would kick in and pull us towards some edge, and we would plunge over the edge again, twisting and corkscrewing around the track. And in many ways, life can be a little bit like a roller coaster ride. There are times of gradual progress, not necessarily spectacular, but steady as we move towards our goals. And there are those short periods when we think perhaps we've actually reached our goals, or at least we're making progress towards them. All the hard work has been done. We're finally on top. And suddenly we find ourselves plunging over the edge again at a rapid rate, plunging into confusion and chaos, our lives and our plans unraveling along with all our hard work. Times of work and success followed by times of difficulty and struggle, highs followed by lows. And likewise, it has been difficult and disappointing for many people who found themselves coming out of lockdown to suddenly find themselves again facing increasing restrictions on their movement and on their social contact and interactions. In Romans 5, verses 3 to 5, we read a well-known passage. Suffering or hardship produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope, and the hope we have does not disappoint. We are in a period of having to persevere or endure. And what Paul is telling us here is that these times test our faith. Our ability to endure or persevere, he says, leads to character. Or perhaps a better translation of that would be leads to experience. It's actually the word experience. And what Paul seems to be saying here is that these experiences that we have along the road or along the path that are difficult test our faith. They strengthen us in our faith. And so Paul is saying these difficult experiences develop a quality or a strength within us. Thus the translation produces character. So difficult times produce a strength of character within us. In Yucatan, Mexico, there is a plant that grows in hard, rocky soil called a sisal plant. And some of the world's toughest twine is made up of the fibers of this plant, as are many carpets. And one day, some enterprising Americans came along and they thought there was lots of money to be made from this sisal plant. And so they figured if they planted this sisal plant in the rich soils of Florida, where the plant wouldn't have to struggle so much in order to survive, that it would grow to an enormous size. It would produce 4, 5, maybe 6 times the normal harvest, and therefore promising a huge return financially. And all was going extremely well for these entrepreneurs until it came time to harvest the plant. And then they discovered that the tough leaves from which the fiber was taken for the carpet and for the twine simply collapsed into soft pulp. The tough fiber quality of the leaves was actually missing. And they soon discovered that the toughness And the strength that was the prized characteristic of the sisal plant was acquired as a result of its struggle with its adverse conditions: wind, heat, barren soil. And once those testing conditions were removed, the plant lost its characteristic strength and therefore its usefulness. Difficult times do not mean that God has abandoned us, or that something is deficient in our faith, or even that we have done something wrong. The scriptures tell us that there will be times of testing and hardship that we will all face, but during those times we are not abandoned. On the walls of Auschwitz concentration camp is graffitied a sign which reads, "I believe in the sun even when it is not shining. I believe in love even when I am alone. I believe in God even when He is silent. Even in the midst of tragic circumstances, God is present, even when I don't see Him or perceive Him." See, difficult times lead to a strength of character, which in turn leads to hope. Max Lucado tells a story about a family that owned a houseboat in Miami, and Hurricane David was approaching. It's heading straight for them. And those on the houseboat wondered what they could do in order to protect themselves and their boat. And in the midst of the panic, a man by the name of Phil said to them, "Whatever you do, do not tie your houseboat up to the pier or to any trees. You actually, if you want to save your houseboat, need to put out into deep sea. Because if you tie to the pier or to any trees, you'll regret it, because the hurricane will destroy the pier, it will destroy the trees, and it will smash up your houseboat. Instead, put out into the deep. Place 4 anchors at different parts of your houseboat and lower the anchors, and leave some slack in the rope, because you don't want to pull too hard against the rope. No point straining." And so the owners did as they were advised, and Hurricane David struck with ferocious devastation, wreaking havoc and destruction all along the coast. The houseboat, however, that was anchored in deep water remained unscathed. And the same is true of life. If you tie all your hopes onto surface things, like emotions or circumstances or gimmicks or even earthly possessions, no matter how sturdy they may appear, they will constantly disappoint. Because when the difficult storms of life come along, and they will come, they will be like those trees and they appear. They simply get washed or blown away. Your only hope in difficult times is to anchor yourself deep in God's Word and into His promises. In Hebrews 6, verse 19, we read these words, "We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, secure and firm." We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, secure and firm. And so we come back to these words of Paul: suffering produces perseverance. You know, there are times of testing of our faith that we all go through, times when our lives are tested and we need to persevere and endure. But it produces an experience which is a strengthening and giving us this quality or this character of being. And so Paul says, may these times that test us not break us, but actually develop this character within us. And that character produces hope. Hope not tied to the things of this world, but a hope that is anchored and secured in God. So during these difficult times of restrictions and COVID-19, when we're unable to gather, may we find ourselves anchoring deep in God's word and his promises. And may we find in him a sure hope that is secure and that does not disappoint. Well, thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday.